Live from the Dodge Sports Desk at the Opubco Studios, I'm Mike Sherman, and welcome to the latest edition of the Press Row Live. I'm joined today by columnist John Rohde, who will tell you how far OSU has come since losing in the rainstorm at Troy. Deputy Sports Editor Mike Kaler, who will tell you whether TCU is just the kind of opponent OU needs to help its national championship cause. And columnist Barry Trammell will tell you whether the Thunder are bringing a better roster to Oklahoma City than the Hornets. Barry, is it true? Does the Thunder really have a better roster starting off than the Hornets did when they got here?
Well, I think they do. The Hornets got fairly competitive really quick. But if you remember back that October when we were getting ready to celebrate the NBA, that was a destitute roster. I mean, they were coming off an 18-win season and just had no optimism for anything, just glad to have a roof over their heads. Now, the difference is that team, no one had any idea how good Chris Paul was, how good he would be immediately, runaway rookie of the year, just a fantastic player from the get-go in the NBA. But if you look at the roster, the Sonics have more decent players right now. The Thunder have more decent players right now than did the Hornets.
John, I think this question's really relevant because everybody wants to know how much better the Thunder can be. That Hornets team won 18 games with all kinds of guys who are really borderline NBA players. I'm going to read off some of these names to you, see if you remember them.
Yeah, good luck reading them.
Alex Garcia. You remember that one? Magic Lampy. I think I just said that right. Darnell always called him the Magic Lamp. Sean Banks. Bojan Nakbar, an NBA player, but here it comes. Jackson Vroman, your Big 12 friend.
Iowa State.
He played quite a bit early in the year.
That's what I'm saying.
There was a time when, they were hurt by injuries, and Vroman was starting, and Speedy Claxton was starting. It was destitute.
Well, I'm thinking Speedy Claxton. He parlayed that season into a free agent deal with the Hawks. It turned out to be a nice deal. But some of these guys, now let's compare them with what the Thunder's bringing. Okay, Johan Petro. Nobody is making a spot for him in the National Basketball Hall of Fame, but he's a usable big man. Nick Collison. Solid NBA player that's improved every year he's been in the league. I think we can go on. Desmond Mason, Joe Smith, not to mention Chris Wilcox. I think they got better young players than the Hornets did.
Well, the thing that's different about this one is this team matters. The other one we were just taking care of for a couple of years. This one's ours. So that's what matters about it. We didn't care how good or bad the Hornets were.
That's right.
They won 18 games and they sold the place out.
Right. Until about the second week. Then we started caring.
That's right.
I think halfway through that exhibition game against Denver, when people started heckling Carmelo Anthony, and he said, "Hey guys, it's an exhibition game," I think our caring really went up.
But the key on this whole talent deal, though, is this. Can Kevin Durant and Jeff Green and Russell Westbrook, the young guys that seem really good, can they make the kind of strides that Chris Paul made? If they do, we're going to have a pretty good basketball team in town.
Really, does it come? Is the tighter question really? Can Russell Westbrook in some way approximate what Chris Paul did?
Yeah, everybody's putting a lot of stock in Westbrook, but he showed as much as stock as you want to put into what he did down in Orlando and what he's looked like since the draft. They're putting a lot of their chips on him, and who knows how good he's going to be.
Really, you can't. Chris Paul was the rookie of the year, and took the league by storm. He just literally did. I remember people thought, "What is this? We've not seen much like this." All the Isaiah Thomas comparisons. I think asking Russell Westbrook to do anything like that. All I'm saying is they seem to have a far deeper roster. When they go to number 9 and number 10, I don't see any Jackson Bromans.
Well, let's reserve. Let's see what kind of ball player Robert Swift is before we get too carried away.
but there's no European stiffs on the Thunder like there was on the Hornets, though. Arvydas Macadamia, or whatever we want to call him, he was terrible, and he's out of the league. He's the Petro and all those guys are head and shoulders above the Magic Lamp.
Interesting, too, that roster. You could tell early on that Byron Scott was looking at some of these guys and thinking, who's the guy that got me these players? You remember Alan Bristow was supposed to be the general manager. He never made it to Oklahoma City. They made the switch to Jeff Bauer right before the season started, and it was clear that These aren't my players. I'm not playing these guys. Conversely, with Sam Presti and PJ Carlesimo, these are my guys. These are my handpicked people. This is who I want. Still some guys left over from the Rick Sun regime in Seattle, but not that many. These guys have really remade that roster. Next question, Mike. OU plays TCU this week. 3 years after losing to the Horned Frogs in that 2005 opener, one of 2 losses at home in the Bob Stoops era for the Sooners. What is playing TCU again going to accomplish for the Sooners, and is it a good thing?
Well, they need a quality win over a quality opponent, and they're hurting themselves a little bit by how bad they've won these first 3 weeks. They didn't do themselves any favors by breaking Cincinnati's quarterback's leg. They need those guys to stand up and play well the rest of the season. But TCU comes in; they're ranked in the top 25. The Mountain West is emerging as maybe the 4th best conference in the country, for crying out loud, with BYU.
Ahead of ACC, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so.
Okay.
Yeah, better than it's TCU better than Wake Forest. But so if OU goes in and has a really good win over TCU, that's kind of the one they need to hold on to for the rest of the year. Everybody's already forgotten that they played Chattanooga, for crying out loud, and Washington stinks, and Cincinnati is hobbled. So they need one win that they can cash in at the end of the year to help them if there's a decision to be made between 1, 2, and 3.
Bend but don't break the Horned Frogs. Is that the case, Barry?
Well, what's interesting to me is when you outlined OU's schedule when it was made out 2 or 3 years ago with Washington, TCU, and Cincinnati. Washington's the marquee team, and then you think, well, then TCU's pretty good, and then Cincinnati's okay. Well, everybody's jumbled up. TCU's clearly the marquee opponent, and then Cincinnati next, and Washington's down at the bottom. If Washington had turned out to be what Washington should be and has been, this would be a really good non-conference schedule. Washington's pulling the Sooners down. They're terrible. They're not going to win, I don't think, more than 3 or 4 games. So they really, you're right, they do need TCU on this schedule. They need TCU to continue to play well after Saturday.
John, what's important about this game? It'd be your first chance to see the Sooners in person.
Winning it is important. Revenge, whatever the word is, but that's important. But this is a good team they're going to beat, and they will beat them. And because they're interested, their attention is there. 4 years ago, the team was in disarray from the quarterback on. First play of the game, overthrows them by 15 yards, Paul Thompson. This is a much different OU team. Their mindset's different. And TCU, Barry's not going to lose more than 1 game a year or 2 games a year. They could lose to OU and maybe BYU. They'll beat Utah. So this is a quality opponent here.
Hey, does this squash BCU's hopes of being the BCS Buster, being the team that actually emerges from a non-BCS conference and gets in one of the BCS bowls?
They got to lose, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if they lose this game, is that write them off?
I mean, everybody else is on track, like Boise State beating Oregon. I mean, the other BCS Busters who have these type of games have been able to win those type of games. East Carolina and Boise State and BYU and them coming up. So TCU, this loss is going to scuttle it for them.
Well, we're down to and you got to be unbeaten.
Right.
There's only 6 left, mid-major unbeatens. 3 in the Mountain West: Boise State, Tulsa, and Ball State. So, TCU's got to win out.
John, let's move over to OSU. Mm-hmm. A year ago, the Cowboys were in disarray after their loss at Troy. How much better is their footing this time around when they're going to face Troy up in Stillwater?
Well, it depends if it rains. But they've come as far as Zach Robinson's taken them, because they had a quality back last year at one toast and found out it was Hunter, I believe, that he had a breakout game that night.
Same night.
Darius Bowman is gone, but Des Bryant's here, and Zach Robinson is the key. And they're at home, and now there could be 50,000 people there. It's important that OU remember 2005 against TCU, and it's important that OSU remember last year against Troy. I think that's a huge deal. I hate it when coaches say, "Oh, forget about revenge, just worry about." No, don't forget about it at all.
Well, last week Troy played a decent game against Ohio State. It took 4 touchdown passes by Terrell Pryor. Barry, I saw that game and thought, "Uh-oh, you didn't."
No, I mean, I don't think Troy's going to win this game. I mean, TCU, comes up and wins at Norman twice, but you don't see mid-majors pulling off the upset on the road hardly ever. OSU's a different team at home than they are on the road. This is a game Oklahoma State should win. Now, I think it will be a good test. I think Troy will be competitive. I think it'll be a solid game. But if they were going back to the sticks of Alabama, I'd be scared to death if I was OSU. But they're not. We're going to be playing at Payne County, so I think it'll be a solid victory for Oklahoma State.
Guys, when are we going to find out whether Oklahoma State's defense is better?
Well, when they go to Columbia, when they go to play Missouri, because that's going to be the real test. But at least this Saturday kind of gives you a true measuring stick of here was Zach Robinson when they said, hey, Zach, you're the new starting quarterback, and now here's Zach Robinson now. And he hasn't really been asked to do too much in the first 3 weeks. I mean, they were going to roll in those games no matter, if you or I were the quarterback, for crying out loud. Well, maybe you. But now you get to see how Zach really has gotten and how much better he can be.
Cowboys on the brink of being in the top 25 for the first time since 2004. Win this game and they're in?
Well, the ironic thing is if OU wins and OSU wins, then OU helps OSU get in. Because TCU's ranked 24th or whatever, so there you go. There's your favorite Cowboys.
John, are they a top 25 team?
Well, not sure, but it's all by default. I mean, if you sit down and figured out your own poll, you go, where am I going to find some teams for this thing?
That's right.
And it starts about number 7 in the country. After that, it's kind of a crapshoot.
And you'd be like,
really
hey, these guys are 4-0.
I only thought that was the case when I was doing the 4A girls basketball poll. I was always looking to fill out that top 10. Let's take some readers' questions. First question, guys. Is the SEC overrated? Barry, you first.
Oh, jeez.
Yes.
Turn off his mic.
The SEC is overrated. That doesn't mean it's not a great conference. It doesn't mean it's not the best conference, but it is overrated.
What do you mean?
The hype is too much on the SEC.
So
it's not that much better.
Much?
The SEC is not that much better than the other conferences on a regular basis. This year it's the Big 12, I guess, is the number 2. The SEC is better than the Big 12, but it's not that much better. The hype machine is purring along very smoothly for the SEC, and it always does.
If this conference race was the American League East standings, and we're headed into the last week, how many games back would the Big 12 be?
Oh, 4 or 5. 4 or 5. They're close, but clearly the SEC is clearly better. It's got deeper teams at the top, and the SEC rum-dums are better. But overall, most of the teams line up pretty close. Oklahoma's as good as LSU or whoever. Texas, good as Georgia. Those kinds of things.
Oh, jeez.
John, is SEC overrated?
We're live, by the way.
I said, oh, geez.
I know.
I'll give you Texas in 14 against Georgia.
I think Texas is underrated. I wouldn't sell the Longhorns short if I was somebody.
Well, you can brag about them in 2 weeks.
Well, my deal is like what Barry wrote on page 2 today. Saying the SEC is overrated is saying like Coca-Cola is overrated compared to Sam's Choice Cola. The SECs, don't blame them because they know how to run a conference, and our friends at the Big 12 don't know, how to get a good TV deal or when to play games or any of that stuff.
Right.
SEC they market themselves,
and
so they cash in on it.
They're great marketers. They got their own national network with CBS.
They got the best TV contract.
And they got ESPN on primetime. Yeah. They do a great job of marketing. And they play games in September that matter. They're just way ahead of other people in terms of promoting themselves.
Don't scold them for that.
Barry's comment about the SEC reminds me of Yogi Berra. Nobody goes there anymore. It's too crowded.
That's right.
Next reader question. Will the Pac-10 weakness hurt USC? John?
No.
Really?
They'll just cruise on in because you already make up your mind about USC. You can pretend all you want until they actually face somebody, which they won't do, you'll never know. So it's all in your imagination.
And everybody's imagination's running wild with the Trojans?
You seen the first place votes lately?
Yeah.
I've
seen their defense too, and it just seems to be faster than ever. Barry, will the weakness of that conference though hurt them?
I think it could. If the stars aligned and the Big 12 champ and the SEC champ went unbeaten, 13-0, I think USC could get left out.
You think they could go to third?
I think they could.
They
fall
might go
to
to
third.
second, but I
think they could fall to third. I tell you, if Florida wins out,
oh man,
or Georgia with that schedule,
It's just the SEC.
Nobody's going to be. Nobody.
It's just the SEC.
The SEC's good. It's just overrated. But those teams, I don't think you can keep them out. And if Oklahoma or Missouri, if they both go 12-0 and play each other, but the truth of the matter is, we're not going to have 2 unbeatens out of the Big 12 and SEC. That's rare occurrence. So I think USC will be fine, but USC does not want to get into a situation where they have to try to win a three-way tie.
Mike, one of the most interesting things on News OK this week is our college football roundtable, in which these guys debate this very question. And the question was, hey, if there's unbeatens in the Pac-10, Big 12, and SEC, who's most likely to be left out of the pie? Your thought on that?
Yeah, most everybody said USC, and to me, this is the problem with preseason, not ranking teams until later on in the season, or not ranking them like Barry does with how they've really done. I mean, they've beaten Ohio State. Right now, that's the best win so far that somebody's had. Well, you could say LSU's win over Auburn is almost as good, but they put themselves in the top 3 or the top 5. At the beginning of the season, basically they have to win their non-conference games, and then they play a bunch of, Oregon States and really weak Pac-10 the rest of the year, and they're set. So I think it's just a symptomatic of the bigger problem.
We're going on to Don't Be Surprised If. We're ending the show with that. Is anybody going to bite on Don't Be Surprised If Oregon State beats USC? Probably not, but Barry, you go first.
Don't be surprised if the great borough of Queens goes up in flames this week. Second straight year, the Metropolitans are flaming out at the end. Classic choke job last year, and now the Mets are doing it again. Last night, a total choke job against the Cubs. They're tied with the Brewers in the wild card. The faces of the fans on ESPN last night told the story. They are going to torch that city if the Mets blow it again.
John?
Don't be surprised if Tulsa runs the table, goes 14-0, but not get into a BCS bowl game. They just don't play enough teams. The only team they'll play worth a darn is East Carolina. That'll be at home. They'll be 13-0 at that point. They could be. They should be. And if there's going to be a non-BCS team in there, it's going to be BYU. Tulsa could finish 14-0 and not go to a BCS bowl
Will
game.
there be howling?
Hopefully of joy.
Will it be justified?
Yes. They didn't play anybody. But they're really good. Tulsa's really good.
Mike?
Don't be surprised if this is too personal, but my proud alma mater, Missouri State, who lost at football a couple weeks ago to OSU, does not play football next season.
Drops it?
Drops football?
Their athletic director retired today. I see them dropping football, but that's just a hope and dream I have.
Can't John
every
Q.
night.
Hammonds just buy a team?
I wish. There you go.
I'm going to go with my Don't Be Surprised If is going to involve Oklahoma's baseball team, the Minnesota Twins. Scott Baker, Oklahoma State right-hander, in the rotation. Our man from Ada, Nick Blackburn, in the rotation. And the best manager in baseball right now, the man from Okmulgee, Ron Gardenhire. The Twinkies are a half game out. They play tonight. They're throwing their best young pitcher, Kevin Slowey, at it. They come back. They beat the White Sox. They get in. And the postseason involves Oklahoma's baseball team, the Twins. That's it for this time. Be sure to join us right here at 11:30 every Thursday for the Press Row Live, and keep up with the news and opinions shaping sports in Oklahoma at newsok.com, newsok.tv, and every day in the Oklahoman.